Writing style and grammar. Continuity is a smooth flow of ideas, words, concepts, paragraphs, and themes. Try reading your paper out loud to see how the paper flows. Aim for continuity in words and concepts so that your writing is organized and ideas are complete. Explain details and relationships between ideas clearly, and present ideas in a logical order to improve readability. Transitional words and phrases help maintain the flow of thought. Use punctuation marks to note pauses, inflections, subordinations, and pacing. Use a variety of punctuation marks to avoid boredom and add appropriate emphasis. Use pronouns to refer to preceding nouns. Make sure the referent of the pronoun is obvious. Use adverbs sparingly. Ask yourself whether the transitional word or phrase is needed before using it. Be careful when using adverbs as introductory or transitional words to make sure the introduction or transition is needed and that the adverb is used correctly. Following table shows examples of transitional words and phrases. It, this, that, these, and those are pronoun links. Then, next, before, after, while, since, finally, first, second, third are time links. Therefore, consequently, as a result, thus are cause and effect links. And, in addition, moreover, similarly, furthermore, are addition links. But, although, however, conversely, nevertheless, and even though are contrast links. Using these types of transitional words and phrases can make your paper easier to read. Concise writing is saying only what needs to be said in your writing. Write deliberately and clearly throughout your paper. Use only the number of words necessary to make your point. To make your writing more concise, avoid the overuse of passive voice. Avoid overly detailed descriptions, and avoid obvious and unnecessary observations. Avoid wordiness. Wordiness is using as many words as possible when fewer words would say the same thing. Eliminate flowery or overlong descriptions. Use short words and short sentences rather than long and complicated ones. Focus on the facts and on the ideas. To eliminate redundancy, look for words and phrases to remove without altering the meaning of your paper. Redundancy is using similar words to say the same thing. A redundant expression is saying a sum total of instead of a total of, or saying in close proximity to instead of just in proximity to. Saying exactly the same as instead of saying the same as. The reason is because instead of saying because. Too short sentences can be choppy, but too long and involved sentences can make your writing difficult to understand. Single sentence paragraphs are abrupt and usually indicate a need to flesh out an idea further. Paragraphs longer than a page are usually too dense and likely to lose a reader's attention. Vary sentence lengths to make writing interesting and organized. Use simple, common words to write about involved concepts. Break up long sentences into shorter sentences. Avoid too long or too short paragraphs. Address only one thought or idea per paragraph. Break up long paragraphs in logical places. Use clear and appropriate words or phrases with unambiguous meanings. Use words and phrases consistently. Avoid switching between synonyms or near synonyms because they may introduce unintended differences in meaning. Jargon is overly technical terms that make writing more complex than needed and may make it harder to understand. Choose terms that are appropriate for your audience. Aim for simple and straightforward language, and replace complicated words or phrases with simpler or clearer ones. Contractions are shortened forms of one or two words where an apostrophe is used in place of missing letters. In scholarly writing, apostrophes should only be used to indicate possession. For example, the investigator's role. Otherwise, write out the full word or words. Instead of didn't, write out did not. Use it is instead of it's. So avoid contractions. Avoid slang and informal terms used in everyday speech. They're too vague or imprecise for scholarly writing. Make clear and logical comparisons. Avoid illogical comparisons by paying careful attention to sentence structure, parallelism, and word choice. The omission of key verbs and non-parallel sentence structure often contributes to ambiguous or illogical comparisons. The incorrect sentence is an example of an ambiguous comparison because the sentence has two possible meanings. You are more likely to be injured by a squirrel than a shark. You, a human, or more likely a shark, an animal, to be injured by a squirrel. To rewrite the sentence with the first meaning, repeat the word by. You have higher odds of being injured by a squirrel than by a shark. To rewrite the sentence with the second meaning, include a verb for the shark, here, does, and move the shark earlier in the sentence to emphasize the comparison with you. You have higher odds than the shark does of being injured by a squirrel. These examples demonstrate that thoughtful attention to word choice and sentence structure lessens the chance of ambiguity in writing. Use a professional and persuasive tone. Present ideas clearly and logically. Be sensitive and respectful when writing about people. Choose preferred, accurate, and appropriate terms. Use the terms people use to describe themselves. Be neutral and non-combative when describing the work. Use the following verb tenses. For the literature review, use either past or present perfect tense. For your method section, where you describe your procedures, again use past or present perfect tense. When reporting about your results, use past tense. In the discussion or in conclusion, use present tense. When writing about your own personal feelings, experiences, or responses, such as in a response or reaction paper, you can use past, present perfect, or present tense. Active voice is when the subject performs the action denoted by the verb of the sentence. The subject of a sentence is followed by the verb and then the object of the verb. The active voice creates direct, clear, and concise sentences, especially when writing about the actions of people. And use active voice whenever possible. Active voice, for example, says, the participants rated the videos. Passive voice, the videos were rated by participants. So preferably use active voice. Passive voice is when the subject of the sentence is acted upon. The object of the verb is followed by the verb. Sometimes the subject is omitted if it is obvious. Use the passive voice only when it is more important to focus on the recipient of an action than who performed it. In passive voice, stimuli were shown on the screen by the researchers. To rewrite this sentence in active voice, you would say, the researchers displayed the stimuli on the screen. A verb must agree in number, either singular or plural, with its subject. In sentences with two subjects, ignore phrases such as together with, including, plus, and as well as. The correct version is the percentage of correct responses as well as the speed of the responses increases with practice, because increases should agree with percentage. The context determines whether the action applies to the group or to the individuals. Collective nouns can refer to several individuals or to a single unit. If the action of the verb applies to the group as a whole, treat the noun as singular and use a singular verb. If the action of the verb applies to members of the group as individuals, treat the noun as plural and use a plural verb. For example, singular in context, the number of people in the state is growing. Plural in context, a number of people are watching. Pronoun none can be singular or plural. When the noun that follows none is singular, use a singular verb. When the noun that follows none is plural, use a plural verb. None of the information was correct. None of the children were finished in time. Both are correct. When a compound subject is composed of a singular and a plural noun, joined by or nor, the verb agrees with the noun closest to the verb. Neither the participants nor the confederate was in the room. Was is closest to confederate. Neither the confederate nor the participants were in the room. Were is closest to participants. Used first-person pronouns to describe your personal reactions and work. Do not use third-person pronouns to refer to yourself. For example, calling yourself the author. Using third-person pronouns to refer to yourself introduces ambiguity over whether you mean yourself or another author. So it is correct to say, I learned. And it is correct to say, we learned as a group of researchers. Editorial we involves using we to refer to people in general. Avoid the editorial we. When using we, specify the person or people you're talking about. For example, other people in general, or other people your age, other students. As young adults, we often worry. APA style endorses the singular they as a generic third-person singular pronoun. It is inclusive of all people. It helps writers avoid making assumptions about gender. Use singular they in the following cases. Whenever a person uses they as their pronoun, and as a third-person singular pronoun to refer to a generic person whose gender is unknown or irrelevant. Although use of the singular they was once discouraged in scholarly writing, many advocacy groups and publishers have accepted and endorsed it. You can now use they, them, their, theirs, or themselves. There are also alternatives to they. You can reword the sentence, use the plural, or use an article instead of a pronoun. I delivered a care package to each client. Private people usually keep to themselves, or each child played with a parent. However, always use they as a pronoun for a person who uses they to refer to themselves. If you do not know the pronoun of a person being described, we reword the sentence to avoid a pronoun or use singular they. Avoid using he or she's as generic singular pronouns. Avoid combination forms such as he or she and she or he unless you know that this matches the person being described. And do not use combination forms in any case, including parentheses s, he for he or she. And do not alternate between he and she. Use they instead. Use who for human beings, and use that for non-human animals and inanimate objects. A way to determine whether a pronoun is the subject or object of a verb is turning the subordinate clause around and substituting a personal pronoun. If you can substitute he, she, or they, then who is correct? If you can substitute him, her, or them, then whom is correct. Use who as the subject of a verb, and use whom as the object of a verb or a preposition. Use that in restrictive clauses, clauses that are essential to the meaning of a sentence. Don't use commas around a descriptive clause. Use which in non-restrictive clauses, clauses that add further information to a sentence but are not essential to its meaning. Do not use commas around non-restrictive clauses. Consistent use of that for restrictive clauses and which for non-restrictive clauses helps make writing more clear and more precise. Learn more about APA style at apastyle.apa.org.